the regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Notice of this meeting to the public, the time, the date, the place, and the agenda was published as a legal notice in the August 30, 2024 Aiken Standard. Notice to contiguous property owners and signs were posted on the properties where actions are requested by the board, and that was on or before the 30th of August, 2024. Notices were sent to the city clerk for posting on the municipal board, notice board, and they were sent to the web page at least 24 hours before this meeting. Agenda sheets were mailed or emailed to interested parties. As a reminder, it is unlawful for any person giving testimony to this board, providing false information, and that's according to section 22-9 of the Aiken Municipal Code. It states that each infraction is a separate offense with a penalty of up to 30 days in jail and or a fine of $1,092.50. To the board, you have received copies of the minutes from the August 27th, 2024 regular meeting. Are there any corrections or additions? But
For approval of the minutes as submitted.
I second.
it's been properly moved and second that the minutes of the August 27th, 2024 meeting be approved as presented. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of said motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion is carried unanimously. Final orders are being circulated for signature, and we move directly into new business. I call your attention to application 25-93003. That's a variance request to permit a 6-foot fence in front of the yard at 1317 Two Notch Road, and that's zone RS 15 to the city. Has this been properly posted?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
The planning department did receive 2 comments regarding the request, both of which have been included in your agenda packet. The first one there is the property owner directly to the north, which shares the property line where the fence is placed. The second comment was brought in by the property owner to the east across Two Notch Road. And just to clarify on that particular comment, that was brought in for clarification from the planning department. They were basically under the impression that the request was to increase the fencing in the entirety of the front yard rather than just the portion that's currently up. So that was explained to the representative, I guess, for the other property owners in the area who had come in. Basically that the request before you was just the portion of the fence that is currently up, no additional fencing in the front. So once that was explained to them, they basically noted on there that the neighborhood was okay with the current configuration of the fence. They were just concerned that the request would be for additional fencing in the front yard, basically, parallel to the roadway.
Understand.
Essentially, yeah, that was just clarified and noted on there. So it's a little bit confusing, but basically they're okay with the fence as is. They were just concerned if there was going to be any additional 6-foot fencing in the front yard.
Thank you. Presentation?
Yes, sir. 1317 Two Notch Road is a 0.6 acre lot located mid-block on the west side of Two Notch Road between Central Avenue and Dogwood Road. The property is zoned residential single-family RS15. The request is for a variance to City of Aiken zoning ordinance section 414 to permit an approximate 6-foot tall fence in the front yard of the property, 48 feet in length along the northern property line. Pursuant to section 414C of the City of Aiken zoning ordinance, in non-historic residential districts, the area between the plane of the front of the principal building and any street, no fence or wall shall exceed 4 feet in height, except where a higher fence conforming to these regulations exists on a common property line of an adjacent lot, in which case the proposed fence may be no higher than that fence. Because there is no pre-existing fence in excess of 4 feet, the request does require a variance to the height requirement. Information provided by the applicant about the site plan and dimensions of the fence is contained in B of your agenda packet. This is a detailed site plan provided by the applicant, and this is the portion in question here, approximately 48 feet on the northern property line, as indicated here. As you can see, it is set back from the roadway as well. But yeah, technically speaking, this whole area here is the front yard. So this portion that extends out a little bit here would technically need to be no higher than 4 feet per the ordinance. But as you can see, that there's some additional landscaping plans and some additional lighting, I believe, that the applicant will be putting in. But this is the portion of the fence in question here, about approximately 48 feet. As depicted on the attached zoning map found in Exhibit C, adjacent properties are zoned residential single-family with detached single-family residential dwellings on them. This sort of western portion here is primarily RS15, so a little bit larger lots across the street. I believe it goes down to, what does that say there, RS8. There's probably some RS6 mixed in here, but that's a couple blocks over. But in any case, it's basically, you know, residential in use and character. There are some unincorporated properties, most notably directly across from the applicant's property, a couple up here too, but yeah, primarily, you know, city incorporated properties, and yeah, essentially even these unincorporated properties here are single-family residential in use. Exhibit E of your agenda packet contains photographs of the property taken by staff depicting the existing conditions of the property and the current fence. This is just our notice here along Two Notch Road. This is sort of the portion of the fence that extends into the front here. I don't believe it's this entire thing here, although, yeah, I think it's probably about here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 panels or so that would be in the front, technically. So yeah, you can kind of see here the edge of the home bumps out a little bit, so it probably lines up right about here with this bush. But that's the fencing on that side. So anything essentially to the rear of that bush would be permitted by right. It's just this portion in question. Oops, went the wrong way there. Sorry about that. This is just the other side of the property there. As you can see, also the applicant has fenced off the side yard here a little bit. I believe this will be a space for a detached garage in the future. Oops, sorry, going the wrong way again.
Is that going to be a carport?
I believe so. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, the applicant has recently purchased the property and is making upgrades to it at this time. So anyway, this is the other side, the southern side of the property. As you can see, there's quite a large existing vegetative sort of barrier there that is absent from the northern property line. And this is just the properties across the street. Again, there's some precedent for, granted, I believe these two are unincorporated, but I think the county has similar fence regulations, but there is some precedent for some front fencing in the front yard that's a little bit higher. I noted in the staff report too, just going back here, actually, I don't think I have, if we kind of zoom out, I believe it's at the corner here of Boardman and Two Notch. There's some fencing in the front yard, as well as, I believe, down here at the corner of Cherry and Two Notch. So there is some precedent for pre-existing fences in the front yard that are in excess of 4 feet, even in incorporated properties. The planning staff's evaluation of the request, as well as the applicant's response to the required 6 variance criteria, can be found starting at page 2 of your agenda packet. This concludes staff's presentation. If there are any questions, happy to answer.
Do we have any questions to the city from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
John?
just as a clarification, the neighbors don't object to now.
Yes, sir. Yep. So the first comment is from this property owner here, who's the direct neighbor that would share the property line with the applicant. So they are okay with that. The second comment, or rather comment, and then I guess there's like a sort of roster or a list of other folks, was brought in, I believe, by this property owner. And she had gathered, basically some signatures from the surrounding property owners in the area, basically saying that they were okay with the fence as it's currently configured, but they would be in opposition to, for example, extending that along this property line, which is not the request before you. It's just that portion on the northern property line, this portion here. So, and that would have to come back anyway. So, yeah, they're okay with it as it's configured.
Okay.
They were just concerned, based on the information they had gotten prior to contacting us, that the fence may be going further than it already is.
Okay. Thank you.
Of the protocol, again, for what an applicant has to do, and is it make an application? Does the fence builder come in and make sure that they're doing the correct thing? And was this flagged by a patrol person? How did this come to be? And then remind me again what the protocol is.
Yeah, so fences do not require building permits. So it's basically on the owners of either the property owner or the fence building company to establish or understand or get the information from us as to our requirements. Basically the only recourse we have is noticing it in the field, essentially, because the building inspections does not require permitting for fences. So we do our best to try to educate folks, but yeah, unfortunately, sometimes that, they get put up one way or the other without us catching it or whatever, right? So, but yeah, there's not really a good mechanism at this moment for us to,
Catch it before it.
right, unless somebody asks prior or is more familiar with the ordinance, just in working with throughout the city.
So we're relying on the public to read the ordinance or come in and ask a question, or that the contractor used to build the fence is familiar with the ordinance.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
But
To the city, has there been any previous discussion requiring permitting of fences?
I believe it's come up in the past, without, more intimate knowledge of why, for what reason that wasn't part of the building inspection's purview. I can't really comment further, but I believe it's come up in the past. I'm just not sure exactly why, that permit isn't required. I know there's a number of other things that they don't require permitting for. My guess is because it's maybe not as structural as some of these other, like there's no roof on it. So it's maybe not as big a concern of it like collapsing and, damaging property or something like that. It could be related to the building code as well. I mean, I think there's certain leeway there for what they are required to inspect. But yeah, I mean, at this point, yeah, building inspections, they just don't issue permits for fences. So,
Well, just as an observation, it appears that this board hears a lot of requests for variances on fencing. So it would maybe behoove further discussion, because if it's up to the public or the building inspector riding around the neighborhood or something like that, seeing a ordinance violation, and yet the owner should have known, or the fence contractor should have known, but nevertheless the owner has gone to the expense to build something, and then we find out after the fact, whoa, wait a minute, it's only supposed to be 4 feet beyond the plane, where all of this could have been resolved
yeah.
in the beginning. Granted, I know fences aren't structural, I got it, but it just seemed to me that an issue like this could be resolved if a simple permit would be required.
Yeah, that very well may be. You know, it's certainly something we can explore moving forward. Now, we'll say we are going through an ordinance rewrite process, so that may change as well. You know, whether or not that's allowing a certain, you know, distance into the front yard to be a little bit higher, because it does seem to be fairly common that people want a little bit more privacy these days, I guess. But yeah, I think there may be some confusion too. Just in, because this kind of was illustrated when the folks brought in that note, you know, essentially to talk to us. So I think there may be some confusion just generally to what constitutes the front yard. The ordinance does state that anything, you know, between the front plane of the structure and the roadway essentially is considered the front yard. But yeah, there may be some confusion because the folks that did submit that note kind of didn't realize that this constituted a front yard fence. So I think there may be some confusion there just generally with homeowners, maybe not knowing that that's the front yard technically for the ordinance. But yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, it does seem that it's a common occurrence, and yeah, outside of noticing it or, you know, broader education or people calling in, yeah, there's not really any way for us to, at this moment, address it until it gets noticed, you know, at this point, yeah.
Well, you might want to look at the past couple of years of meetings of this board and how many requests for variances of fences come up because of this very thing, that they've gone this far and this expense to get to this point.
Right.
And it may have to come down, or a portion thereof may have to come back to get in compliance with the ordinance.
Yeah, it's certainly something we can look at, and you know, again, maybe as part of that ordinance rewrite, you know, bring in some of that data and just show like, hey, this is pretty common. We might need to address even the language of the ordinance itself.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. As far as you know, the city does require a line of sight for placing a fence. Do you know if they have any requirement for lighting?
In terms of
Street lights, should a neighborhood be lit?
that, I don't know. I'm not sure that there's much in our ordinance with regard to lighting. There's a little bit in some of our planned commercial or planned residential districts that addresses lighting. But yeah, I don't know to what degree the ordinance requires, you know, streetlights be in place. I believe it's something that can be implemented. And I was asked by the applicant to kind of find out a little bit more information for her on that, about that. Haven't been able to at this moment, but it's certainly something I think that can be addressed, whether that's in coordination with DOT or the utility company, or if it's a municipal, you know, solely the city's responsibility. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, the ordinance doesn't really necessarily speak about, you know, street lighting per se. It might be more of a city code requirement. How often they space that, I'm not sure, but I'd like to certainly find out more information moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Brandon, you look puzzled.
No.
No.
I'm good.
Do we have any further questions from the board to the city? Thank you. We now hear from the applicant. You have received a copy of the staff report. Do you wish to embellish the report or just respond to and from questions from the board?
Thank you. I'm Carol Locke. Do I do this? State my name, Carol Locke. Thank you. Locke, 1317 Two Notch Road, Southeast. Thank you all. I don't have any additional comments to my responses. Just to say that in your question about the lighting, my landscape lighting will probably incorporate also a security Wi-Fi system. My lighting will not be, it will not be up and bright. It will be mostly down lighting or along the fence, pinpoint lights that go up and highlight the fence and the house. I don't plan for any bright lights. I did ask the question about the street lights because there are only two, one on the south side of Cherry and then the next one is on the north side of Palm. It is dark on that little stretch.
Questions from the board to Ms. Park, Ms. Locke?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
John?
And this is just a question. I noticed what is the purpose of the fence in the front? Are you just beautifying the curb appeal or increasing the curb appeal in the front of the house? Because your back of the house is a chain link fence that's open. I'm just curious.
It's open now. My lot did not have any trees on it. It had very few small trees, some scrub trees and some dying trees. I'm not sure why the lot was cleared. I'm the second owner of the house that was built in 1968. I had that cleared. The chain link fence will have plantings around it. On the south side, my new neighbor to be has a privacy fence along her fence. I don't plan on adding any additional privacy fences. I just intend to add landscaping.
Okay, I was just wondering if it was.
No, it's just,
It seems a contradiction if you have that fence for privacy and your backyard is totally open.
the backyard's for the dogs, but I will plant along it and add landscaping
Right.
back there too.
Brandon?
So, walk me through the 6 foot versus the 4 foot, but what is that enabling you to do that you couldn't do either with a 4 foot height or just with landscaping itself, trees, hedges, things of that nature?
I'm not sure.
What's the necessary component of having 6 feet of fence on that one side
Well,
to your plan?
ignorance of the law is no excuse. I know. My fence builder came from Georgia, and I did. It was just a mistake on my part. I would like to keep the 6 feet. I would like to turn my yard a little bit more into a modern, sleek look. So I think that the 6 feet will improve the look. The reason it's there is if you come from the north down 2 Notch, the 2 houses before mine, from Dogwood to my house, are old established homes and have minimal landscaping. So when you hit that stretch, it's as if it's almost a wide open field. And I kind of wanted to differentiate my yard from theirs with landscaping and the fence.
Okay, so I guess you, and I appreciate your candor, you answered really the initial question. It's not 6 feet by design, 6 feet by accident is what you're telling me.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to piggyback on that, I'm just curious, did the builder that you used out of Georgia, was there any sort of conversation about what he felt to be his knowledge of any of the ordinance in Aiken? Did he just sort of say, this is what I normally do, it's 6 feet, this is what I recommend? Was that a conversation?
It was after the fact. In all honesty, I just told him to put up the fence, and I said, add that amount to go to the front. When I got home, he said, you know, you may not be able to keep this fence. And I said, what? And so he knew.
But he didn't tell you prior to that.
No, ma'am. I got paid him for it. He's happy to take my money.
Oh, really? I'm so surprised.
And,
Did he have you sign any sort of contract or documentation in regards to that? Was there a written agreement or any sort of paperwork?
everything that I've gotten from my contractors, I just moved here, and I moved here in January. I purchased this house in end of March, and all of the work that I have done has been carbon copy work that they have signed and I have signed. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
But
You had a separate, I assume you had a separate builder or renovator for your house, is that right? For
Correct.
interior and exterior work?
I had concrete work done. The new concrete work was one person. I have a general contractor who's permitted everything. One general contractor from Graniteville, and then I had the fence contractor.
Okay. I guess
Those are all the separate trades I've had.
I guess what I'm reaching for is the engagement that your contractor, your general contractor had with the building official with regard to this, but absolutely nothing was said in the permitting process to get your house work done, get the work done on your house. Nothing was ever said about fencing or anything like that, I guess. And that discussion was not had with any of the permitting people in the city offices.
Not to my knowledge. They were two separate contractors who didn't know each other, I don't think. I mean, one was, the fence is from Martinez, Georgia, and my GC is from Graniteville. My contractor does all of the work with his own crew,
Yeah.
and I just had my own fence person. I asked around and wound up with him.
Okay,
I don't think they know each other.
okay.
The concrete contractor knows my general contractor.
Yeah.
That's how I found him,
Okay,
but not the fence.
okay. Thank you.
Chairman, I have an additional question.
go ahead.
So in follow-up to this contract, it seems like he is clearly aware of the height breach. Have you had any conversations with him about what it would take to bring that into compliance? Is there a rework to this existing fence that you guys have discussed? Other than tearing it
Other
down
than-
and building it again?
Right. No, and then when I decided to ask for the variance, I spoke to the fence contractor, and I said, let me come down here and make my presentation, and then we'll discuss the cost of whatever the redo is.
So no conversation on that
Correct.
yet? Okay. Thank you.
One more question,
Go
Mr.
ahead, Bill.
Chairman. Did city staff, planning staff, when you learned about having to come and ask for a variance, did they go over the application process with you and go over the questions that are asked in the application process? And there's 6 questions that you answered in the application process. And did they, or whomever you spoke to, explain to you that all 6 requirements, all 6 questions have to be answered and have to be in effect in order for approval of the variance? Like you can't have just 5 of 6 or 4 of 6. You have to have all of them.
Yes, sir, that was in the, that was in the directions, I think,
Okay.
that it had to meet all 6.
Right.
And I believe I answered all 6. I just got it, did I get it online, or did you email it to me?
I don't remember.
It's been a while.
But I do remember having a conversation with you. So yeah, either I directed you to probably the online form, or I may have sent it to you. I can't quite remember, but I don't believe you picked up a physical copy though.
I did not.
Yeah, so it was either emailed or I directed you to the sort of our database with all the forms on there.
Ask a question.
Yeah,
So the petition to oppose this, that was actually the neighbors saying they did not want that.
That was the surrounding property owner's concern that the fence would be in excess of what is currently there.
Okay,
So essentially, they were okay with it as it's currently configured, but they would be concerned if, for example, the fence continued along this portion and then went parallel with the roadway.
okay,
So they didn't want any additional fencing.
right, but they were okay with what was there already.
Correct, yeah, but it wasn't clear from the notice that was distributed to them exactly what portion of the yard was going to be
understand.
fenced, so they had kind of assumed that the request was for additional fencing in the entirety of the
Right.
front,
Okay, okay,
or potentially in the future. But yeah, it was clarified to them when they brought that in, essentially, that
okay,
the request is just for this portion of the property, no additional fencing in the front, which they were okay with.
okay.
Can I add something?
Yes,
Can you go back to the slide of the site plan of the street?
I'm sorry, which one?
Site plan that has the unincorporated,
Oh, sure. This here?
actually, it was this person right here, sorry, and she thought that I was gonna run the fence all the way across. Her son is the owner of the property. I introduced myself to him. I haven't met any of the other neighbors. But I told him, I said, absolutely not. I just want it to go, the existing fence. So, as I understand it, she was, it actually was not this person, it was this owner here, was the originator of the letter. But her son was the one who added the comment at the end that they were okay with it. Chandler, who initialed the letter, he said, well, we're okay. The CDB, I think, is the executor of the property. His mother just didn't know. She thought it was gonna go all the way across the front.
Okay.
Does the board have any additional questions for Ms. Locke?
Let me, okay, so
Judy?
are you at, okay, I see on the, in the, last page of this, of the original thing says, approval of a variance to zoning ordinance, whatever, to permit an approximate 6-foot tall fence in the front yard of the property. But you're saying you don't want the fence in the front yard? Or you do?
No, I don't.
Okay,
Parallel to Two Notch, no. I just want to be able to keep the one that's there on the north side, which is also the front yard, I guess.
right. Okay, so how far does that, does that fence go toward the street?
It's actually, I put a tape on it the other day, it's actually 12 feet from my property line. It's 26 feet to the first yellow line on Two Notch, and it's 36 feet from the center line of Two Notch. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure. Okay, so the whole property right there, with the dark line around, that's all of the property, right? Okay, and how far do you want the fence to come on the side?
Just right where it is.
Where it is now. She's not adding anything.
Okay,
Yeah, it looks like it's approximately 48 feet.
My property line is actually buried in that huge tree. It's a little bit on my property and a little bit on my next door neighbor's. And it's a good 12 feet. I have 10 sticks there. I measured the other day and it was 12. Yeah.
So it's,
And then you may see the property line in the one with the sign, the yard sign. Yeah, here's my property line.
there's the stakes right there.
From the end of the fence to my property line is 12 feet. Then from the end of the fence to this white line on Two Notch is 26 feet. And then another 10, so 36 feet to the center of Two Notch there.
but you're not going to extend it further than where it is
No,
now?
ma'am.
Okay, okay. Is that on both sides of your property?
No, the other side is the other property, the southern,
Shrubbery.
this is their fence, which is actually directly on the property line, and this is their.
Okay. Now, can we see the whole fence from both sides?
This is the furthest out that I took a picture. It's I mean, it doesn't provide a whole view of the entire property. So you kind of have to like
Do Exhibit B.
together, I guess. But yeah, essentially, the only portion of the fence that's in question is this section here. It's approximately 48 feet.
And how far from the property line is it by the street?
I think this is a little under. It sounds like it's probably a little bit more than 10 feet, but sounds like current measurements were about 12 to the edge of the property line,
Okay,
and then upwards of 30, 20 feet to the roadway. So it's well within the property line.
Well, go to the slide where you have the zoning ordinance sign.
right there.
Yeah, so
That'll give you your look right there.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So this is the edge of the property line. It looks like you got it surveyed probably when you purchased it.
I did.
Yeah, so that's the corner of the property, so it's, about 12 feet from the edge of the property line, and then an additional 20, 30 to the road. So there's significant distance between the edge of the fence and the property line itself, as well as the right-of-way. So it's wholly on the property.
Now, tell me where the left side of the property line is, the fencing.
Of the wooden fence.
on the opposite side of of the house? What's over there?
That's not her fence.
Yeah,
Just the
there's-
bushes?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Yeah.
All the way to the.
Right.
I apologize. I probably should have taken a picture of the entirety of the property, but, yeah, there's sort of a note here. There's just shrubbery hedges
Right,
on this
okay.
side. There's no new fencing
Okay.
in the front. She did put some up in the side here, but that's permitted by right, as well as this fencing here that's permitted by right. It's really just that northern section that's in question.
And is it the neighbors who are opposed to that part, or did they alert you to it?
No, yeah, I believe it was noticed, by a city official,
Oh,
city
okay.
employee. I think there was some, ongoing construction going on or whatever, and somebody had passed by, but, yeah, basically, the entirety of the neighborhood is okay with the fence as configured.
Now, what is the criticism against the 6 feet or the fence totally?
Yeah, it's just that and again, it's somewhat confusing because it would appear as though it's sort of in the side area of the property because it's on that side property line. But the ordinance considers this entire portion of the front of the yard to be the front yard. So yeah, it is the height of the fence because it is considered to be in the front yard. It cannot exceed 4 feet by right, even though it's on the side property line, and may appear as though it's in the side yard. It is, per the ordinance, technically in the front yard.
Okay. Now, I can't remember who lives to that side where the fence is.
Mitchum, she's the one who wrote the first letter, to y'all. I have no problem with the 6-foot fence as it exists. The fence is very well constructed and does not in any way obstruct my view of traffic. And again, Ms. Bland, who wrote the second one, thought the front was across the front, not the side considered the front.
Oh, okay.
She was opposed to that, but once she came down and met with Max, and he explained to her, actually, that it was the north side, not this east side, if you will, which is the true front of the house.
Do we have any additional questions from the board to Ms. Locke? Thank you very much. Do we have others to speak to the variance request? Final call, others to speak to the variance request? Seeing, hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, tell me again, what's the footage of the fence from the street on that right-hand side? On my right-hand side, not the street, not the house.
I get 48 from the Appendix B.
And does the fence go all the way to here?
That's down. Subtract 10.6 because it goes out to the property line and right there on the streets. So we're talking about 38 feet of fence.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say it again?
We're looking at actual 38 feet of fence that's in violation.
I believe it is 48
48.
feet approximately. Yeah, so this number is in reference to this section,
Okay.
these two arrows. And this
Oh, that,
is the distance between, I believe maybe it's the tree here.
right,
But I think
okay.
this is slightly under, right? It sounds like it was about 12 feet to the
Right.
edge of the property line. So this should probably read 12 feet. So the edge of the fence to the edge of the property line
Okay,
is an additional 12 feet.
thank you.
But the fence, the portion of the fence that is in the front yard is 48 feet in length approximately.
Thank you.
So you're saying that taking away that 10 feet, 6 inches would make it more in compliance?
No, that's just the distance to the property line from the end of the fence.
Yeah. Yeah, in order,
Spatial requirement that
Right.
you asked about, end of the fence to the property line. Of course, he's saying now it's closer to 12 feet, but, so from the end of the fence to the property line is 12 feet.
Okay.
That's all that's
yeah.
telling you.
Okay, and so the hedgerow on the opposite side goes to where the 10 feet, where the double arrow is, right?
I'm not sure exactly how far it extends. Because it's vegetation, it wouldn't necessarily be required to be any certain height or anything like
Right,
that. So,
okay.
I mean, yeah, as long as it's on the property, I mean, theoretically it can grow as high as the plant will grow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Karen,
I'd like to make a motion. I would like to proceed my motion with the statement that this is a tricky one.
We agree.
So, for the sake of protocol and what we're charged to do on this board, I'm going to move ahead with making a motion so that we can move forward. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to deny the approval of a variance to zoning ordinance section 4.1.4.c to permit an approximate 6-foot tall fence in the front yard of property zoned residential single-family RS15 and generally located at 1317 Two Notch Road Southeast, TPN 122050404. That the total length of the 6-foot tall fence in the front yard not exceed approximately 48 feet along the northern property line, perpendicular to Two Notch Road Southeast, that the location of the improvements be consistent with the submitted site plan, and that the final order shall run with the land, and that the final order shall be recorded at the Aiken County ROD office.
Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Bud second the motion. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Karen?
Mostly I want to just go on record saying that since I've been serving on this board, I've kind of lost track, but I think it's been 3 years or more. We seem to get this issue a lot. I feel very strongly for the applicant that she's been put in this position by a very negligent vendor, contractor, who basically admitted that this was potentially a problem, and we're left to rule on it because there doesn't seem to be a consistent protocol when it comes to fencing in the city. I feel like a motion should be made in reference to getting this clarified for future situations prior to this redevelopment of the ordinance. I don't know if we have that power, but we've been charged with not setting a precedent for other people to come in and say, well, she got a 6-foot fence and they got a 6-foot fence. Why don't I get one? And then we've created a monster. But as for the criteria, they don't meet the criteria, any of them for me. It's after the fact that sort of meets the criteria in a sense. Like, there's exceptional conditions because she was not guided correctly, but it's after the fact. So I just want to say that I'm frustrated with what we're tasked with because it feels like it looks lovely. There's probably going to be plantings in front of the fence that are going to obscure it and probably beyond 6 feet. So there has to be some sort of precedent set. And I hope that the vendor does the right thing to clarify this and not at her expense. So.
Mr. Chairman, I will agree with my colleague that, you know, we have a fence ordinance. It's there for a reason. I think it's our job to assure that we enforce this fence ordinance if, as it says here in the notes, that it doesn't present an unnecessary hardship to the applicant. Well, it says strict enforcement of any design or performance standard in the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Well, there's not a hardship here. The applicant was misguided, but I really feel that if the record would reflect, and I'll speak for myself, I'm not sure about the rest of the board, but there should be something addressed in the ordinance regarding fencing and the requirement for some type of permit, not necessarily a design approval, but some type of permitting process so that the applicants, so that the owners know very clearly what the requirements are. There may be a question of what defines the front yard. I know we had a discussion about that several meetings ago of what determined the front yard, but the requirements clearly, to me, aren't met. The 6 requirements clearly are not met. And we must feel that this board, or I feel as a board member, all these requirements, 6 of them have to be met. And we make this point very clear. But I think we're falling short if we don't have some type of approval process so that the owner is aware of what the ordinance says.
Right.
Not leave it up to a contractor, not leave it up to word of mouth or anything like that. I've said enough.
I agree with you.
Judy?
I mean, think it's been said pretty clearly. We're being tasked with trying to grant variances when we think the 6 criteria have been met, and they haven't. As sympathetic, I think, as the board is in general, with her not being properly coached or guided by her contractor, I do think would encourage her to go back to the contractor. It's wood, it can be cut down. I mean, I think there's some methodology here that's not overly invasive for her to be able to get this fence resized, fortunately for her. But to Board Member Daly's initial comment, I mean, we just can't grant variances for accidents that have been made, because what's to prevent, let me just build it and say I didn't know it, and then, okay, you get a hard luck story. So that's kind of where I stand.
I think I echo your sentiments, Brandon, because we have an ordinance. And the ordinance state that in the front, 6 feet. And because a contractor make a mistake, I don't think there's no other impact to the property owner, except that the contractor made a mistake. And I don't think we should reward the contractor. He should be required to adhere to the rules and regulations for the city of Aiken. If they establish a ordinance, they are required to abide by it. Otherwise, they don't do business in the city. So I don't think we should. I'm against approving this variance. I think the contractor should be forced to put in what is in accordance with the city responsibility.
I agree.
Do we have any other discussion from the board? Hearing none, those in favor of said motion show by raise of the right hand. May I have a rereading of the motion?
Oh, okay. The motion made was to deny the approval of a variance to zoning ordinance section 4.1.4.c to permit an approximate 6-foot tall fence in the front yard of property zoned residential single family RS15 and generally located at 1317 Two Notch Road Southeast, TPN 122-0504-004. The total length of the 6-foot tall fence in the front yard not exceed approximately 48 feet along the northern property line perpendicular to Two Notch Road Southeast. The location of the improvements be consistent with the submitted site plan. The final order shall run with the land, and the final order shall be recorded at the Aiken County ROD office.
Thank you. Again, those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion is carried unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that it seems like a simple question from the people in the permitting office. Is there a fence involved with your renovation? Would really head off a lot of potential problems.
Yeah, that
Instead
may be
of
something.
having a permit required.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we may be able to coordinate with them regarding that. I'm not exactly sure of the timeline of this, whether or not the fence was put in place first and then the rest of the construction had occurred after the fact. So it's possible that was the timeline. The fence was kind of already up and they may have assumed that it had already cleared or something like that. But we can certainly speak with them just to kind of reiterate that it's important for, if they notice something being in the works, so to speak, that they have folks reach out to us before it's completed or started even, because, yeah, I mean, it definitely is information that doesn't get distributed, it appears, so.
So with that, I call a close to this meeting. The meeting stand adjourned.